This is Job chapter 8 and verse 8. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is your brother Hawayala. I want to give all glory and praises to Yahweh in the name of our Lord and Savior, Yahawashi. Grace and mercy be abound to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth that are hearing the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Yahawashi, and enduring to the end by keeping his commandments and overcoming the wicked one. I wanted to go into a lesson, as we know, we are in the last days, and many of these lessons are also edifying for us, whether they're of knowledge based in history and also of the prophecies moving forward in our present time. So part of the reason why we have to go into history and search into the former age and search the history of our fathers is because by going through the scriptures and being able to piece the puzzle together, you begin to understand the magnificence of the Lord's word by the things that he spoke and confirmed going back ages ago. And what it does when we go into things such as the scattering our people, the diaspora, even going into the identity of nations, all these things are done to help build our faith in understanding that our power has always been correct from the beginning, that none of his prophecies or none of his words concerning our people and the destiny of our people has even failed. And what that means is that as we approach this last and final stage of this current age under Edom and looking forward into the kingdom of heaven, we have to remember that the Lord's word stays true always. And that's going to be a part of you in your faith to hold that hope, of the world to come, knowing that the Most High cannot lie, okay? And so as we go on, this particular lesson is going to be dealing with basically this side of the world, the northern tribes. As we talked about this on the blog, but I would like to do this particular lesson more formally. But this is a large part of end time prophecy and of the state of our nation as well. Okay, so this particular book, I actually own the actual physical copy, but I've also talked about it on the blog as well. It's called The Origins of the American Indians, European Concepts from 1492 to 1729 by Lee E. Huddleston. Okay, so this particular book goes into what they believe, meaning the people that were the explorers, the people that conquered this side of the world, basically these Edomites, and primarily in this particular book you'll get a lot of information from Spain, conquistadors, people that were Jesuits and things like that, people that were of influence and that would have basically chronicled what they saw here, and they would have brought that back to their respective countries. And many of these things were written in journals, written in letters, and then over time these were compiled into a book. So this particular book by Lee E. Huddleston is essentially a bunch of information compiled from 1492 to 1729 that was written by people that lived in that particular time. And again, when as this information is coming out, we have to understand that they did not expect that in these last days that we would basically seek out this information. But what does Job 8 and 8 tell us? To inquire of the former age and search out the history of our fathers. Something that many of our people don't even care to do. A lot of our people are out there pushing certain identities that keep you grounded in the mentality of being just here in Babylon and not looking even further past, meaning into the biblical origin of our people, okay, which is what these people wanted to do. They knew that a people can't come out of nowhere. Every people has their origin. So that's why they're going into the origins of this. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and start. We'll start at 34 actually. Okay, because they even talk about this briefly, okay, which we'll get into as well, because I have a very big information on this particular aspect of the topic of the discovery of this particular part of the world. Now, I'm going to start here. And what they do, they tell you information that the people from back then heard, or what the rumors were, or what was said about this particular place. So as we go here, it says, yet in his Apologetica Historia, Las Casas berated the doctor who had postulated a Jewish origin on the basis of a few words in the practice of circumcision. Okay, so what happened was when there was a doctor who realized that the natives were saying certain words that only had Hebrew origin, okay? And in addition to that, the practice of circumcision, okay, which would have been something that our people would have been keeping, okay? Even though a lot of our people went off, there were still customs as our people were morally decaying that was still being kept as a custom, okay? He also rejected the possibility of Jewish contact with America in the time of Solomon in the Historia. So what they're trying to do is they're also trying to remove there was rumors, okay, and there was information out there that Solomon had been involved with the discovery of this land, okay, which we'll get into in a future lesson if the time permits, okay. So they're already piecing together that Israel already had contact with this land. Didn't dwell here, but had contact, meaning that there was exploration already done under the time of Solomon. But he's trying to reject these things. We're going to go further on, and you're going to see what information was said by other people. It says, furthermore, also Las Casas referred to Esdras, which was later used as the basis of the lost tribes theory. He did not use it in such contexts. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down. Okay, so it says, in fact, we'll read this sentence right here. It says, it is difficult to understand how anyone who even looked at Torquemada's table of contents could credit him with the belief in the Hebrew Indian theory. All right, so basically there was a Hebrew, meaning an Israelite, and theory concerning the identity of the people that they called Indians or the natives of this land, okay? Notice that if you go through a lot of these older things, they're not calling them Negroes. They're calling them a separate set of people, because remember, the kingdom was already divided, and on top of that, they are basically looking at things from a culture group perspective based on lands and origins. And one of the things that I began to see when I looked at old writings is the way in which Esau understands that not all groups of people are alike. So what they always like to do would be to look at the culture and the history of a people to determine if they're of the same lineage or biblical or nation or nationality. They didn't necessarily just look strictly on physical characteristics. And I've noticed that they're more inclined to look deeply into that than our own people are. Instead of a lot of our people are looking at the physical appearance and looking for, afros and a certain shade of melanin, a certain content of melanin and so on again to determine if they're Israel. All right. So we're going to go on. It says the theory that Indians of America descended from the Hebrews, or more particularly the 10 lost tribes of Israel, apparently originated in the published form with Johannes Friedrich Lumnis de Estremo di Indicio et Idorum Vocatione, issued at Antwerp in 1567. Okay, so the first year in which they were publicizing this, and this is mainly over there in Europe, okay, as information was getting tracked back and forth concerning the people of this land. This is not too long after the conquest of the Americas, okay, that this happened. So within a few decades, they were already publishing this information, okay, about the fact that the people that were over here were the 10 lost tribes. And you think they're basing that because of one reason? No, they had a myriad of reasons and evidence beyond a reasonable doubt as to why. And, some of that information other brothers have brought out from other groups concerning the physical evidence alone. And then the cultural evidence, the words, the linguistics of some of these words that have Hebrew origins. Okay? So when people say that, look, the people were heathen. Yeah, the people were heathenized. That's the reason why we all went into captivity, even the northern and southern kingdom, because we began to keep things or invent our own ways, do everything according to our own heart. but there was always usually remnants of who we were left behind, either physically or through our language or through our culture. Okay, so as we go on, it says a second edition appeared at Venice, so in a whole other country, right, in Venice, Italy, in 1569, and the Bibliothèque Nationale of Paris. So they even had this in Paris. So these particular books are going around. These editions of these information, these books were going around Europe. Okay, and it says, and the Nationality of Paris has a book of luminous called the De Vicinate Extremi Judici de et Consumerationis. Then you got Antwerp, which is the same area that they talked about before, 1594, which it says is the Mimi Ouvrage que de Extremo de Judicio. This is the book. It's very rare. So this particular book is very rare. I'm pretty sure if you see the print, you might have to see it in a whole other language. And who knows if it's been translated. That's something that maybe I could search another time and see. But we're going to go into what was in that book. Okay, so it says here, and apparently was rather obscure in its own time. Now, as we go down, let me just skip down for the sake of time. Lumis de Extremo de Indicio is largely concerned with abstruse theological points, this together with his slim geographical knowledge, because slim meaning they didn't have that much geographical knowledge at the time that this was written. Because remember, the whole so-called quote-unquote New World was not fully explored at the time of this publication. But there was enough evidence for him to write this particular book concerning this. Now it says here, makes for a confusing book. For example, his references to India leaves it unclear whether he means East or West Indies. We know he means West Indies because remember, he's talking about the New World. And a learned man will know that the New World was west of Europe. And they would know that India is east of Europe, meaning that the original routes of going to India, whether it was around the seas, the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and then going off into what is now known as India, okay, the country of India, or the South Asian subcontinent, because it says here, references to the reasons why there were antipodes to Magellan and to the Americas show that he meant the New World. So they knew he meant the New World. Yet he seems to have thought Asiatic India was not far from West India. So they're just saying that, but the other people, they knew that he was talking about the New World. Okay, so this author is trying to play dumb, but they knew that he was talking about the New World, which we'll go into the name of this New World and what we called it initially. Now it says here, Luminous introduced most of the theological arguments which were later advanced to indicate a Hebrew origin for the Indians. The basis for his story of how the Jews got to America was the fourth book of Esdras, whose authority Luminous accepted despite its apocryphal standing. The authority of Fourth Kings and the prophet Isaiah supported the Esdras account. Okay, so they understood that the books of Kings, okay, which this Fourth Kings would technically be Second Kings, because First and Second Samuel by some people are considered First and Second Kings, because those were when the kings were beginning to rule in Israel. Was it from the book of First Samuel era all the way to the Second Kings? Okay, that's why some people know it as Fourth Kings, but this is in Second Kings, which goes into what the detail of the Assyrian captivity. Now, as we go on, it says a detailed discussion of these passages and of the development of the biblical arguments for Indian origins will be given below. Briefly, Luminous' argument was that the 10 tribes of the Hebrews exiled to various parts of the Assyrian Empire by Shalmaneser had escaped to Arswith, which Luminous identified as India or America, meaning West America, because initially the area that was called the Caribbean was also known as the West Indies. Okay, so when they say India in these books, they're talking about in the West Indies. Okay, that's why they had to put in parentheses America. So when you go into the account in the Second Kings, it tells you about how Shalmaneser came and took the northern kingdom down, and then of course he deported them within his empire, okay, which we'll get into as we go into the book of Second Esdras later. So let's see here. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do, actually, we can go into the Second Esdras real quick, and then we'll get into the next part, because there's somebody else that pops up in this as well. So we're gonna go to Second Esdras chapter 13 and verse 39. Whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came into another land. Okay, so that peaceable, he's seeing the vision, okay, of what happened, okay, to our people, the multitude of them, okay, because there was always a remnant that was left behind in throughout these regions of the northern tribes, okay. So, but the bulk of them took counsel to leave, okay. Now, verse 41, it says, but they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And that same region is called Arsareth. Then dwelt they there unto the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. Okay, so they're going to dwell there in the latter time, okay? Not in the midst of times, the latter times. What is the latter time? The times that we're in now. Because this was where they had came to. Now, we know that Israel was scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, but this particular region, known in the Bible as Arsareth, is important to understanding what time we're in an end time prophecy. This is how we know that the Most High's word is true, because this particular word has been made manifest again to us in these latter times, that we may be able to have hope for salvation. Okay, so that's the reason why it's important for us to go into the history, because it lets us know the timeline of everything that's happening. All right, so when we go back, we're going to go ahead and read about another individual who wrote some information as well. Now it says, Spanish writers who adopted or commented upon the Hebrew origin theory generally did not cite other contemporary authors as sources for their opinions. When they did, the most frequently cited work was the Chronographia of Gilbert Genebrard, French cosmographer and clergyman. The book appeared at Paris in 1567 and was widely used in Europe. But even before Genebrard broadcast the Jewish origin theory, several Spanish friars working in Mexico had arrived at the same conclusion. Several. So not only did this man, who was French, came to that conclusion, okay? So this is a learned man, a guy that was a chronographer, okay? You have to really be a guy that really knows about lands and peoples and places, rivers, places where you have different things, buildings, right? You got to know about topography. These are learned men, and he was a clergyman, okay, meaning that he had to be into knowing a little bit about that Bible, meaning he came across these things and understood that the Israelites would be scattered into other lands. See, back then they understood that. Today, things have been hidden from a lot of people that they don't understand. But back then, they had to know this stuff, because if you're going to control and take over the world, you better know who and where everybody is, and who and how to operate with each group of people. That's part of them having power over us. Now, also, it says several Spanish friars working in Mexico came to that conclusion, and we're going to get to this whole Mexico thing as well. All right, two of them, Juan Juarez de Peralta and Diego Duran, had completed their manuscripts around 18 1580. Okay, so we're gonna get into this guy Juan Juarez Peralta as well. I'm gonna just kind of show you like his origin. Now it says Juan Suarez de Peralta, Tratado del Descubrimiento de las Indias. So meaning that he's giving you the description, okay, of the Indians. Okay, so this is somebody who's actually doing that. Remained unpublished until 1878. And it says it was originally published in 1580. And it says, let's see if we got any information here. Okay, so here, as you go down, they keep on talking about this particular thing concerning him in Mexico. Now, I'm going to go to his part right here. In fact, this is him, okay? I'm going to translate this to English because for some reason, there was not an English version of this on the Wikipedia. Okay. So it tells you that he was born in New Spain, which is Mexico City. Okay. Now remember, if you go into history, Mexico City was taken down, what was known as the actual Aztec capital, all right, of Tenochtitlan. Basically was taken down in 1521. So he was born 20 years after the takedown. This is a Spaniard, okay? Now he's known as a Creole from New Spain. What is it? A Creole means someone who was of Spanish descent but lives in the New World, or was born and raised in the New World. So this does not mean a quote-unquote mestizo. A Creole is someone who is of Spanish descent, both their mother and father, but they are born and raised in the New World. They were not born and raised in Spain, in actual Spain. They were born in New Spain. Okay? So it tells you that he was a writer. Okay? He was considered a historian for dealing with the subjects of the conquest. Now we're going to go down because I hadn't translated it, but there may be some information here. Let's see. Okay, so he even served under Hernan Cortez. So this guy, he's from a high-end family, all right, of these Spaniards, all right, that's conquered our people. Okay. So you see here it says Juan Suarez el Viejo served under Hernan Cortez as one of his trusted soldiers. Yeah, because his sister Catherine contracted marriage in Cuba with the conquistador, and thus the father of the chronicler became brother of Hernan Cortez, who became the uncle of the writer. So basically he is brother-in-laws with Hernan Cortez. So Hernan, in fact, let's go to Hernan Cortez real quick. So this is Hernan Cortez's brother-in-law, okay, who is saying that the natives of Mexico and of the Americas are Israelites. Okay, now who's Hernan Cortez? Some of you brothers, especially from the Northern Kingdom, or that grew up in those areas, you would know about Hernan Cortez. It says here, he was a Spanish conqueror who, at the beginning of the 16th century, he led the expedition that began the conquest of Mexico and the end of the Mexica Empire, placing it under the control of the Crown of Castile, creating the so-called New Spain. So he conquered that particular area. See, when you go into there, look at it, his conflicts on the right side. He's part of the Spanish army, a conqueror or conquistador. That's what it means. You know, and see, that's the thing. What's crazy is that their names, they call them conquistadors. A conquistador means one who conquers. Okay? So you got people out here that are proud of being, you know, of like Spanish in their background. You're basically proud of being a people that were demonic conquerors. Okay, the stuff that they did, no one. If you're proud of what they did, then you identify with them, then you know, don't be surprised when the sword comes upon you in that same fashion. Okay, because you were proud and happy and okay and didn't have no problem celebrating the likes of Hernan Cortez. So all the Most High is going to do is just going to bring a sword upon you in the form of the modern day Hernan Cortezes, okay? Because you saw no problem with it anyway. All right, so it says conquest of Mexico, conquest of Honduras, okay, the Algiers expedition, okay? So it goes into basically his history, and basically he served activities in Cuba, okay? So he was in Cuba. Remember, he married the sister of Juan Peralta, okay? And then you got the children, and then it even tells you one of his children was a mestizo, which means that his mom was a native of Mexico, all right? But by extension, with his father being a conquistador, he's an Edomite, right? But that's a whole nother subject. All right, so you see there what's going on, man. We're getting some good information with this stuff already. You're seeing the connections. These were people that conquered our people, and they're saying they know that those people that they conquered are Israelites. Okay, so you don't think that Hernan Cortez didn't get that information from his brother-in-law Juan Peralta, that the natives that they conquered are Israelites? You don't think that when Hernan Cortez went about killing all those people that he didn't know that they're Israelites? This is the reason why we always say that it doesn't matter if Esau knows you're an Israelite or not. It's not going to stop him from laying that sword upon you. Okay, they've known that. There's always been among their elites, they knew that, and even among their common people, in certain instances, knew that same thing. But that didn't stop them from oppressing you. That's why a lot of times you don't want to waste your time dealing with these oppressors and trying to convince them that you're an Israelite. Guys like Vocab Malone are persona non gratas to us, man. They're counted as spittle, right? Unless than a drop that followed out of a bucket. We don't care if he believes we're Israel or not, because it ain't going to change his mind of how we're being oppressed. Okay? So as we go on, it says, in addition to these three friars working in Mexico, from Mexican materials, Miguel Cabello Volbaya or Valboa wrote his Miscellanea Anthrica or Antharctica at the same time from Peruvian materials. So we're keeping it going now, man. We're going through these different lands, okay? Even among the Peruvians, they're saying the same thing. Cabello Valboa was first published in 1840 in the French language excerpt. A copy of the manuscript was edited and published in 1945. It says the Miscellanea proposed a non-Jewish or Aryan origin of the Indians, and see, that's why they're trying to hide it. Because look when it was published. Hey, that's why the brothers that know, man, the brothers that go like to go into these old books, y'all know what I'm talking about. When they start publishing stuff in the 20th century, it start getting strange. But the stuff before that be on point. But then they try and cover up their tracks later. Now, as we go on, he's going to go into it again. Now, this is what Juan Juarez de Peralta, remember, brother-in-law to Hernan Cortez. Remember, his sister married Hernan Cortez. So this gives you a good idea of how high this man is when it comes to the New World. Okay, so he's going to have that information. Now, let's see what he said. This is an admitted conqueror, an admitted oppressor of our people. He says, Juan Juarez de Peralta was the earliest identifiable Spaniard to endorse the lost tribes of Israel theory, and even his acceptance was qualified. He based his opinion in the authority of the chapter 13 of the fourth book of Ezra, which we already read, and it says the passage which Juarez Peralta referred to which we already read that. Okay, you can see it's the same thing, it's just kind of translated a little differently. Okay, but it's pretty much the same exact thing, which is, it says fourth Ezra because the book of Nehemiah and the book of Ezra in the regular Holy Bible is considered first and second Ezra in some Bibles. Okay, this is fourth Ezra, but it's really second Ezra in the Apocrypha. And it says chapter 13, verses 40 through 47, which we already read. Okay? And so as we go on, it says here, Suarez de Peralta interpreted this to mean that the 10 tribes taken captive by Shalmaneser had escaped to a land called Arsareth. This Arsareth was obviously near America, and some of the Jews had migrated to it. So this is what he said. He said that Arsareth was in America, okay, or in the Americas, and that some of the Jews, meaning some of the Israelites, had migrated to it. And that's how they know. See, there was no Bering Strait theory. We're still not yet to find the Bering Strait theory, because the Bering Strait theory came later. Okay, when you look it up, when it came out, it came later to cover up the tracks of this true information that was already published prior to those type of, false theories, such as the Bering Strait theory. Okay? This is the information on the ground that they had in the 16th century. And this is what they understood, and this is what they shared in the different libraries, in the different schools, and among the different people, the learned people of Europe. This is the information that they were getting concerning the natives of the New World. Okay? That they were considered they were the lost 10 tribes. And what did that do? When the Edomites came and on those ships, the pilgrims and all them people, when they came and they docked their ships on the shore, what did they do? Even with them holding their Bibles, what did they do? They slaughtered our people, knowing that we are the children of Israel. So that gives you a good idea, an indicator that these people don't give a damn if they know you're Israel or not. That's not their concern. Their thing is that they hate you. Okay? So as we go on with this, he supported this conclusion by citing the similarity of certain Aztec words to Hebrew words, and by claiming both people had similar idolatries. See? So basically, he realized that the Hebrew words, there were Hebrew words within the Aztec language. Remember, he was born and raised in New Spain, which was also known as Mexico, in the area that was the former Aztec capital, which later became known as Mexico City today. Okay? So he was in the midst of all this. He was getting the information from his teachers. He was also probably even a lot of these conquistadors and their sons that grew up in New Spain, they knew how to speak the native tongue. Okay, they would learn how to speak the native tongue. Many a times they would be reared and brought up by an Aztec maid or maidens that would basically be taking care of them. And while they were learning their Spanish, they were also learning some of them Aztec words as well. And remember, these people back then, they would learn about other things like the Hebrew language and customs. Okay, they didn't have time to watch TV shows. They were busy learning. A lot of these men, because they were men of leisure. When you have slaves, when you have servants, you actually have more time, leisure time, to learn other things. And that's what a lot of these type of dudes did back then, is they spent most of their life training, learning how to be a warrior, learning different skill sets, learning different languages, learning history, and things like that, because many a times these guys were aspiring to be rulers and leaders over provinces, over areas, okay, governors. And those men would have to be knowledgeable of the people that they would be ruling over, okay? So we have to remember that. So it says, he did not, however, claim the lost tribes exclusively as the exclusive populators of the New World. In fact, he thought that the first settlers probably came before the flood. But remember, there was nobody here, okay? There was no indication in the scriptures that there were people here before the flood. This particular lesson is dealing with just the origin of the natives of the Americas, and how many of the early explorers and people that came here to this land and went back to Europe were publishing books and information saying that the origins of the American Indians throughout the islands and throughout the lands, okay, were of Hebrew origin, and thus the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So let's go ahead and continue on to this Arsareth piece. Now, this is from the Jewish Encyclopedia, All right, this is the unedited full text of the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia. Okay, so now when you go into Arsareth, this is what they said. They said, the name of the land beyond the great river, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses unto the time of restoration, according to 4th Ezra 13 and 45. Columbus, meaning Christopher Columbus, identified America with this land. Okay, that's plain. Now, why would Christopher Columbus do that? Because Christopher Columbus was a man who lived in the latter part of the 15th century and the early part of the 16th century, which these same men, like Juan Peralta, Hernan Cortez, the Spanish friars, and other men, all right, cosmographers, those men lived in that same time. They were all sharing the same information. And Christopher Columbus, being a learned man and an explorer, understood that the New World was Arsareth. It's plain. Now, we're going to deal with that scripture of Arsareth and show you how it was actually hidden in plain sight by Moses, okay, in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, this right here is from the BibleHub.com. So, as we read here about Arsareth, it says, this is the land to which the 10 tribes were deported. Again, referencing 2 Ezra 13 and 45. Of course, you know about 2 Kings and a reference of the northern tribes going into captivity into Assyria. And of course, later, many of them leaving to come to this part of the world. It is described as another land. Now remember that, another land, lying a year and a half's journey beyond the river, i.e. Euphrates. It possibly answers the Hebrew Aretz Asherah in Deuteronomy 29 and 28. Okay? Now it says, in Josephus' time, the people were still believed to be there in countless numbers. Okay? So they understood back then that there was that the bulk of the northern tribes had went to another land. This is information that was already given even to Ezra. And Ezra got that information prior to our people going back to rebuild the second temple. So when those brothers went back to build the temple the second time, they knew that the bulk of the northern tribes had returned back. Now, peep how heavy this is. Ezra was told that, yet in Ezra's time, he knew people that were of the northern kingdom. He knew people that were of the northern tribes. So he knew that there were still some that stayed, but many of them left into this other land, as it was told to him, all right, in the book of 2nd Ezra. Okay? So when we say that there was people of the northern tribes were still there, that some of them still stayed behind, that's true. It's no different than all the Jews, all Judah, Benjamin, and Levi didn't return back to the land. Even in the time of the Maccabees, when you read the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, there was Jews from the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi that did not live in that land. Even in the time of Maccabees, when you read, they were not all there, okay? So we have to remember that there was multiple scatterings and migrations of our people going back. We're talking about going back as far as really 3,000 years, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to deal with this whole Deuteronomy 29 and 28. Now, why are we bringing that up? Because Solomon knew this. Solomon knew this. Moses knew this. A lot of learned men knew this. Okay? So when we go into Deuteronomy 29 and 25, it says here, then men shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of Yahweh, the God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them forth out of the land of Egypt. Meaning, so this is dealing with the curses. Why are these people jacked up? Why is their land desolate of them? Why are they no longer there? These are the questions that the other people will say about us when we disobey the Lord and when he kicks us out of the land and brings us down low. It says, for they went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they knew not, whom he had not given unto them. Okay? And which is what happened to all the tribes. No man among the tribes, no person among the tribes is seen as completely right with him. That's why you need his grace, his mercy. You need to be under the hedge of his protection. You need to get forgiveness for the remission of sins through belief in his son. All the tribes went into idolatry, all of them. That's why we went into captivity. That's why we were kicked out of the land, because we were not worshiping the Most High the right way, and we were going after our own way. Okay? Verse 27, and the anger of Yahweh was kindled against this land to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. And Yahweh rooted them out of their land again in anger and in wrath and in great indignation. Man, that's three things: anger, wrath, and great indignation. That's heavy. And cast them into another land as it is this day. Now remember, when Moses wrote this, we hadn't been kicked out of the land. Meaning Moses was telling you the future prophecy that when we go off, this is what is going to be said to the people as to why the land was desolate. Why the people that inherited this land, why are they no longer here? And this is what should be said. This is what would be said when someone brings that up, that he brought all these curses to do this to them. And he cast them into another land as it is this day, meaning future tense. This is a future prophecy. This is something that Moses had to hide in the book, okay? Because certain things he couldn't have plain, because Moses understood what was going to happen to our people. Now, we're going to go into this other land, and we're going to look at the Hebrew for it. Okay? Now you see that? Akar or Karath, Arataza. Okay? Arataza means land, and Karath means another. Akarath. Okay? Another land. Another land. Okay? And that's what Arsarith means. That's literally the translation of the word Arsarith, means another land. Okay? So that's what he did. And this is a future prophecy that links directly with 2nd Ezra chapter 13. And that's pretty much, what it is with that one. All right? Now I'm going to show you in the book of 2nd Ezra 14. Now this is the chapter after 13. Okay? So in the chapter after 2nd Ezra 13, look what was told to Ezra. And it came to pass on the third day, I sat under an oak, and behold, there came a voice out of the bush over against me and said, Esdras, Esdras. And I said, Here am I, Lord, and I stood upon my feet. Then said he unto me, In the bush I did manifestly reveal myself unto Moses. Okay, you see the parallel. See, Ezra's had a Moses moment right there. Out of the bush, the voice came to him. And then the Lord told him, I manifested myself unto Moses out of the bush. Why? Why is he showing this? Because likewise, Ezra is in a captivity looking to be delivered. Okay? He was in Egypt, in captivity in which he wanted his people to be delivered from. Okay? So again, read that verse 3 again. Then said he unto me, In the bush I did manifestly reveal myself unto Moses and talk with him, when my people served Egypt. And I sent him and led my people out of Egypt, and brought him up to the mount of where I held him for a long season. Okay? This is heavy, man. I don't even know if there's any greater thing than to be a prophet of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, bruh. So, verse 5, and told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times and the end, and commanded him, saying, These words shalt thou declare, and these shalt thou hide. Okay? So basically, when Moses was writing the law, okay, going back, to Deuteronomy, he wrote in code that the Lord will be angry with us and cast us into another land. And for the sake of this topic, ultimately that other land in the end days, which Moses was shown, that land was the Americas, which again, we've confirmed through documentation, through men who told on themselves and told about the information that they knew of the people. And therefore, because of that, we're able to kind of prove with beyond a reasonable doubt that the land of the Americas is Osiris. And there's much more information on that we can get into. But we see here that the Most High's word did come to pass, and that he ensured that the truth will eventually be brought out. And we're going to go ahead and read this last verse in verse 29. The secret things belong unto Yahweh our God, but those things which are revealed belong unto us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. So hopefully this is edifying. And again, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Peace, mercy, and blessings be abound to the whole 4 elect scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. Shalom.